Hello and welcome to Binge Watch, giving you our picks of what's happening in the world of film and TV. And in honour of spooky season, this episode we're diving in to our favourite frightening flicks.
Horror is a notoriously hard genre to get right. So Jacob, what do you think makes a good scary movie?
Well, firstly, I think if this image was in it,
I agree.
yeah, you do. Oh, yeah. Well, you haven't got away with it because I've got a little gift for you. My Halloween present to you, Annabel.
Oh
it's
my
something
gosh.
Equally as scary.
It's beautiful.
Yeah, look at it.
Thank you.
Watch you absolutely pull it off and me look even more of a fool. Yeah, there we go. Just
Terrifying.
So,
Yes.
apart from us two being in that film, I think what scares me more than anything is like, you know how everyone just like, I don't know, like my mum's like, oh, I don't want to watch it, it's too jumpy or whatever. I'm like, jumps aren't scary, not for me. They make you jump and it's like kind of been and gone. It makes me laugh, if anything. For me, it's like creeping malevolent dread throughout a film. Something, atmosphere, right? And I feel like, I don't know, like in terms of themes or what horror films are about, that scares me. Cults.
Cults. Classic.
Don't like a cult. And like witches, just like when done well. I'm not talking like Ryan Murphy, American Horror Story style witches. I'm talking like really kind of evil, scary witches, like Robert Eggers' film, The Witches.
Historical witches.
Yeah. Like that's like a folk film, right?
Yeah.
It's like it gets its influence from folk, and which is like even scarier if it's set like back in the day. And also something that's set in the home, like Paranormal Activity, right? I know people kind of roll their eyes, especially because it went on for so many years. But like the first film is one of the scariest films I've ever seen.
I still haven't
You've
seen
still
it,
seen
just
it?
because I'm so
I
terrified.
would like to watch it with you because you love horror.
I do
and
love
it's
horror.
truly one of the, because it's like obviously filmed on a video camera, but it's like set in the home.
Yeah.
And when I'm at home, I think of that because it could, I don't know, I could get possessed by a ghost. Something that uses scares sparingly and doesn't just like, it's like hammer it over their heads.
Yeah, I do think, you know that film Relic, that Australian film,
Yes.
that was set in the home, and that's a really good example of where it was just like really haunting atmosphere for about 3/4 of it, and then just one final act that was just like absolutely terrifying.
Like really mind-bending.
Yeah.
I like. This is another thing where I, get really creeped out. It's something you can't really explain. Again, in the house in Relic, not to give anything away, but something goes on where it's like this isn't physically or scientifically possible.
Yeah.
And yet you buy it, but it's really eerie.
It's here. Under the bed.
There's nothing under the bed, Mum.
Will you check for me?
We get stuck into some of our favourite spooky flicks.
Let's do it. So my pick is a film that I think doesn't get enough mention or love. In fact, it got really like bad, at the time, but it's built up a bit of a cult fan base along the way. It's called The Empty Man, and it's on Star on Disney Plus, and it's a really funny one, the story behind it, because it was made in 2016, 2017, when 20th Century Fox, before they were acquired by Disney. So now Disney own Fox, and Fox were like, before they released it theatrically, they did loads of test screenings for the film. Now the film is about an ex-cop who investigates the disappearance of a girl, and he uncovers a cult. That kind of worships worships this entity called the Empty Man. So think like kind of Candyman. You know how people like look in the mirror and say Candyman, like sleepovers. Like, oh, it's gonna go again. It's a bit of that vibe going through it, but it actually also is like a crime procedural. So it's horror, but it's horror thriller.
On the first night, you hear him. And on the second night, you see him.
And on the third night?
Well, on the third night, he finds you.
But this is it, right? It's got this dread, it's everything I mentioned earlier. It's got this dread creeping throughout it. It's 2.5 hours long. It's got like an extended prologue that seems to be really unrelated of what comes later, that lasts for 20 minutes. And you're watching, you're like, wait, is this The Empty Man? Because like the poster of the film doesn't really marry up with what I'm watching. And the test screens were so poor that they were just like, this is rubbish, but let's just put it out there or whatever. Then I think it got like a tiny release and kind of panned, but now people are now watching and going, this is actually really decent.
You love an underdog film as well.
What can I say? I root for the underdogs. It's directed by a guy called David Pryor, who didn't really direct anything prior to this, and hasn't really got anything lined up. And I think he was so bruised by the experience of making The Empty Man So maybe me praising Empty Man, he'll be sat watching this somewhere and be like, I'm inspired to make another one. Just not the Empty Man 2, because we don't need.
We don't
a
like
sequel to it.
sequels.
But it just really, it's not the best film, but it's really eerie, really ominous, and I think people at Halloween love to watch like a scary film, but they get so excited about watching something scary that it doesn't live up to the hype.
Yeah.
Well, this one will, because it's not primarily a horror film.
My pick for this Halloween is Talk to Me, which is arriving on Netflix just in time for spooky season. And I'm sure it will be like #1 when it does, because there has been a lot of hype around it. And I do think that's the one thing that it has going against it, because you're going into it expecting a lot. It's basically an Australian horror film that was premiered at Sundance, and then it was picked up by A24, the kind of indie powerhouse production company. But it definitely isn't like an artsy film. There's elements of it. It feels like a more refined, like popcorn horror movie. The premise is really familiar. There's a teenage girl in a suburban Australian town, and her mum's died, and feeling lonely, she wants to do a seance. And she gathers her friends, and they all kind of take turns with this embalmed hand that whoever's talking to it, whoever holds it, like a spirit possesses them, and you can only do it for like 90 seconds, or like the portal stays open. And so yeah, it's very much just like familiar horror territory.
Talk to me.
There's a scene, we talk about that Hereditary scene all the time. If you know, like that scene. And there's one in this that kind of rivals that in terms of like gore and shock. And I think it's really well placed. And it's a twisty film. And the main actor, Sophia Wilde, is a really good scream queen. I feel like we're going to see her in a lot of things. She's in another Netflix show right now. But yeah, I think this was just such a good showcase for her and what she can do. It's also a first-time director or directors. They were YouTubers turned directors, actually, twin brothers.
Good for them.
Yeah, Danny and Michael Philippou. But yeah, I think they've already greenlit Talk to Me, the sequel.
I mean, it had to happen,
It
to be
had
fair.
to.
I don't like sequels, but that had to happen.
Yeah, and fingers crossed that one's just as good, because I did just have a really good time watching it, and I think it kind of balances that artsy, refined take on horror with just like popcorn fare, just like you just love to be scared. I was like scared and got the adrenaline going, everything you want from a horror movie.
I'd agree with that. I have to ask you, if you were at one of the gatherings that the teens have in the film, and that hand was presented to you, because they're all like,
Absolutely not.
would you do it?
No way.
The hand is there looking at you.
I wouldn't even watch. I'd be out the room.
Really?
I don't
What,
mess
you
with
wouldn't
that
watch?
stuff.
You'd watch, surely. Yeah, no, I wouldn't. But they're now selling that hand, aren't they? Like off the...
I mean, just playing with fire. What do you
Yeah,
expect?
but they
That's
just
what the
like-
sequel's about.
They like you.
Thanks for watching Binge Watch. That should be enough to give you nightmares until we see you next time.
Like and subscribe to us on YouTube, and follow along for all the latest trailers and updates on Instagram and TikTok.